All right, here we're going to do speaker view today, just for kicks. Hello, everybody. It is May already, and welcome to Insight Policing Livestream Uncut. My name is Dr. Megan Price, and I direct the Center for Applied Insight Conflict Resolution, train Insight Policing, which is conflict communication skills for law enforcement. Today, we're going to be talking about insight policing skills, in particular noticing, right? Which is, how do we recognize conflict behavior when we see it? What do you want to look out for? What do you want to pay attention to so that you can use your communication skills effectively? So I am joined by Andre Brooks and Mike Delaney. You want to say hi?
Hey guys, go ahead.
Good evening, good evening, good evening.
That's all you got, buddy?
Oh, good evening, everyone. My name is Andre Brooks. I am a 30-plus year law enforcement officer. Also partnered with Mike. We're still active law enforcement officers to this point. And we're also co-trainers, instructors with Megan in Insight Policing.
Cool. I appreciate you giving me a partial introduction, but let me give the full one. Hey guys, again, Mike Delaney. Like Andre, I'm a 30-year law enforcement veteran in the Washington, D.C. area. My areas of focus were homicide investigations, police-involved shootings, and other major crimes. And like Andre said, I'm a co-instructor for Insight Policing. Good to see you guys today.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. And thanks for being with us. And both of you are co-instructors. And so what I wanted to ask you is, how do you know conflict behavior when you see it on the job? What gives you the clues that somebody might be engaged in conflict behavior?
Well, I think you can look at a person's body language, and that can be a reaction to a police presence. That could be a domestic situation, but like a hands crossed or the face balled up and angry. It's a lot of indicators. A person's emotions. They may feel angry or display emotions of being angry or upset, or just not going normal for them at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is words. You can hear the expression of a conflict, and you can tell when somebody's upset, and then that in a space that's good for anybody to even deal with. So you can notice those kind of things and kind of figure out what needs to be done from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how is conflict behavior challenging for police officers?
Well, I think it could be challenging because it may be a series of things that are going on. For instance, an officer may conduct a traffic stop, and a person, the person that's being stopped may have been just fired from his job, or maybe having some kind of domestic dispute, and their level is up here, and officers approaching just for the traffic violation. So you really have to be on the lookout for that, because if those the indicators that we mentioned earlier, they should be present at that point. A person could be steaming, and that could be a situation where that involvement may escalate just based on that, just based on the police presence, and just a person is just boiling over. Now they just reached their point. So as officers, we still have to maintain that decorum, that professionalism, and try to de-escalate even through that, and the person, like Andre said, they may verbalize what's going on, or they may just be upset, like, what are you stopping me for? But again, we have to remain professional, and we have to get that level down. What do you think, Dre?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, along with what you said, Mike, was in addition to that, is stress. When you confront somebody, you're stressed. You're not really thinking with a clear mind sometimes. And when you're agitated, when you're trying to deal with somebody that's agitated, your stress levels up. You're not making proper decisions effectively communicate with that person at that point in time. So, it becomes a serious conflict, and those are how things get started, because you're not thinking like that, because you're stressed out. I mean, normally, somebody yelling at you, the first thing you want to do is yell right back.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you see somebody in a fight, your stress is going, your adrenaline is going, you're not thinking right. Your brain is telling you to react a certain way, and that way may not be a certain way to actually deconflict the situation that's ahead of you.
Well, that's a really good point, Andre. So it sounds like when you're confronting conflict behavior on the job, when people are angry, when people are elevated, when people aren't doing what the officer needs them to do, all these things actually elevates the stress of the officer as well. And so it becomes difficult to do your job. It becomes difficult to think clearly. You want to yell back just automatically, because that's kind of what happens as human beings, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
So, go ahead.
I was going to say the added stresses now of the way, the society is now, just with all the incidents going on with the police. Police are already stressed. You have the community that's stressed. So any interaction is going to be boiled over, possibly. It's a possibility of it happening. So it's right now. It's a very difficult time, but that's why this type of training is necessary right now. It's a safety. It's tactical, for the officer and for the citizen.
Okay, and so part of that, part of the tactic of insight policing, or this kind of communication, is knowing conflict behavior when you see it. So what difference does that make to recognize somebody's behavior as conflict behavior? How does that help?
I think when you can recognize that a person is in distress and exhibiting those kind of conflict behavior things, that you can take a step back and a role from being this tough police officer and say, hey, listen, I see, start asking the questions to kind of deconflict, to kind of bring down the stress level of the whole incident, the whole situation that's going on, and start asking those questions of that person, those curious questions that we talk about in insight policing, to get to why this person is feeling that way. And I think that's the first step, is to slow down and take the opportunity to really ask this person, what's going on? Why are you feeling this way? I mean, what's causing you to act like this? To start to make inroads into what's going on with that person.
And I also, to add, that's a good point, Dre. To add to that, we have to listen as officers. You have to listen. We can't just go through the motions of asking the same questions without listening, because the initial responses may be similar to a response you got before from someone else, but they may be going a different path. So you have to listen and give that person the respect, like Andre said. Take your time, listen, and and then you may have a solution, or sometimes you may solve the problem or bring them down by just listening. Sometimes they don't have people to listen that listen to what they're saying, to their stressful situation.
So recognizing conflict behavior, noticing that when somebody is heightened, is angry, is not doing what you're saying, is becoming aggressive, that gives you time. It sounds like it can slow things down, because you realize, okay, they're mad or angry or not doing what I'm saying. They're exhibiting this conflict behavior because something is going on with them. Let me understand what's going on with them. And when you can take that step back, then, like Mike, what you're saying is you have an opportunity to listen rather than yelling back or trying to get them to stop by pushing against. You kind of step back and hear and try to figure out why. Is that right?
Exactly. And that, Andre and I, we would do interrogations together, whether or interviews, whether it be a victim's family member or a suspect responsible for a murder. And that rule applies there as well. You have to listen, allow them to talk, and and come up with your strategy at that point. Just listen. You take your time and listen.
Yeah. In today's policing, police are always taught, or always have been, a very reactionary type of situation. When you go into, you react immediately. But as you can see, throughout the years, this reaction has caused such a negative light because it's not taking the opportunity to pump your brakes, so to speak, and say, hey, listen, let's kind of work this thing out, and people may see that as that macho move for a police officer. But in today's society, you would rather be on the end of deconflicting something than be placed in a situation where you're going to be arrested, or you're going to lose your livelihood because you did something reactionary when you should have just taken a step back to verify what's going on and to try to deconflict it.
So if there's kind of a tendency to not, right, to kind of go towards what's making, going towards the conflict rather than kind of stepping back from it. I mean, what kind of tips can you offer other officers to help them kind of navigate your suggestion for pumping the brakes and slowing it down?
Well, I would say you have to practice this. You can't just, read a magazine, an article. You have to practice it and, excuse me, put it in your own words. And it has to be normal for you to do this. And even if it's at home with the kids, with your wife, whatever, you need to practice this. And also, you have to have compassion in what you're doing. Like Andre said, and like you said too, Megan, I know we want to rush in and we want to try to be problem solvers and try to end a threat. But sometimes you have to have compassion, because 9 times out of 10, we're called as officers to a situation that is an emergency or a stressful situation for the person calling. So that stress level is already up there, no matter what. It could be anything. Someone throwing an egg at a car, their stress is up here. And, even as officers, we may be responding, and we may be coming from a vehicular accident where someone passed away. So we clear that call and then we go on to that. So we're up here too. So we have to have that compassion. We have to sit down and we have to practice this stuff, even go through it in your mind.
Yeah, I agree with Mike with that. I mean, this is something, because you're not taught like that in the police departments, in the academy. I mean, you're taught to just go out there and do what you need to do to resolve the problem, whether it's a cat in a tree or whether it's somebody being shot or something like that. Get on the scene, do whatever. There's no real, you now they're probably teaching it a little bit more than they did in the past to try to deconflict, because that's a big thing now going in policing. But prior to it, it just wasn't like that. So I would definitely tell everyone to practice their skills, because obviously policing is evolving very quickly from that very violent reactionary response to incidents to attempting to deconflict successfully for a successful outcome. So anybody that's listening, I'll tell you, straight up, this is not a substitute for your officer survival skills. When it's needed, you're going to have to, go hands-on or do what you have to do to survive out there, to take care of yourself and your fellow officers. But having said that, also, I would say that the policing has evolved now to the point where you have to really learn how to communicate effectively using these kind of skills to verify and to resolve a conflict, so everybody can have a positive outcome.
Good. So practice, recognize conflict behavior, and when you see it, step back and know and realize that there's something driving that, and that you can figure out what it is. And when you can get to the root, when you can get to that nugget, you can solve the problem in a way that's effective. So recognize conflict behavior and practice, and have compassion. Know that we're stressed, officers are stressed, people might be stressed, and if you can do what you can to level it out, right, then you'll be in a good position going forward. Right on. All right. Well, thank you for that. Is there that concludes our episode on conflict behavior and noticing it. Definitely tune in next week. Thank you for watching, and check out some of our other videos too. Last week we had an excellent one on the talk. All right, like, subscribe, and follow. Till next week.